fighting soldiers from the sky, fearless men who jump and die, men who do just what they say, the brave men of the Green Beret, silver wings.
Hello, Patriots, and thanks for joining the United Constitutional Patriots radio show. Johnny and Chuck will not be able to do the show tonight, so tonight we'll have Country Cowgirl, and Gregory will be hosting the show. So now I will turn the mic over to Country Cowgirl. Go ahead, Country Cowgirls.
Welcome to the United Constitutional Patriots radio show. Tonight's guests are Candy. She is a constitutional community advocate. And we've got Lee Rice, who was out at the Malheur Refuge, going to be speaking on that and the Constitution. So, Candy, go ahead.
Hi, you guys. My name's Candy, and basically I am a community advocate in Grants Pass, Oregon. But most of the things that I have to say this evening will roll over to each and every of the states. Any of the federal information will roll over to immigrants or basically foster children or of other cultural heritages. Basically, first off, I'm not an attorney. All I can do is provide information on my opinion and resources and the references. Basically, I've been doing what I do for about 18 years now. Basically, I'd like to thank everybody for the opportunity to speak to my fellow constitutional patriots and community parents. Basically, I don't know exactly where to start because I've never really done anything on the radio, so I'm going to give you a little background information. For those of you that do not understand that your constitutional rights do not mean anything in family court, let me teach you here real quick. In criminal court, basically, you have the right, basically under the Constitution of the United States. However, in family court, which is also known as allegation court or property court, basically allegations can become evidence and a case can be built against you when you are totally innocent of and have actually committed no crime. Why? Because in family court, it's not a crime, it's a court decision. Usually those court decisions involve your children. Basically, with family rights and responsibilities and working with the Department of Human Services Child Welfare, a lot of our guys don't get a good, basically, shake in the beginning. The caseworker, Child Protective Services, will come to the house on a completely complaint that you can't find out who made the complaint. They have total anonymity and they cannot share where this complaint come from. Then you have what you call mandatory reporters, which are schools are mandatory reporters, doctors, hospitals, anyone pretty well in the professional field that comes in contact with your family or your children. And you say, well, of course, Children's Services has been around for a long time. They are a necessity in our society. However, our culture and our children have not necessarily been raised by what the state thinks is the way that they should be raised at the time. So say, give you an instance, an example, your neighbor gets mad at you. Basically, you won't move the car over that's parked beside the garage and he thinks part of that's his property. So he's looking for a way to get back at you. Well, he can simply make a call to the state child protective agency. Nobody know that he make that call. And basically he can say, I saw the man living next door hit his child. Okay. If it falls under a neglect or a physical abuse, within 48 hours, you have Children's Services at the door wanting to ask you questions. They want to come into your home. They want to know what your parenting skills are, how you discipline your children. And they will tell you, especially if you have a teenager, are you giving them their rights? Basically, and parents, they tell parents, well, you took her makeup away. Well, makeup is not a right. But by today's society, it is a right for a 15-year-old girl. So when you're dealing with folks from the government, the state or the federal, knocking on your door, wanting to ask about your children, wanting, saying, well, we got this complaint that this is going on. The child said such and such. We feel that could be sexual abuse. So we're going to now investigate you. Basically, at that point, all of your constitutional rights and rights as a parent just went out the door. Okay, because now you are under their investigation. They don't have to go to a judge to take your children. They can take your children under their concerns. And that's all they have to say in court. Your Honor, we have concerns. They don't have to specify right up front exactly what those concerns are, number one. Number two, you think, they don't have control. I'm the parent. No, they go before a judge within 48 hours to obtain temporary custody so that they can investigate this situation further, because it's their job to protect a child. So basically, with it being their job to protect a child, the judge says, okay, now they have taken physical custody, and they now are going to tell you that you can come and visit your child 2 hours a week, okay, in supervised visitation while you're monitored. This goes on for about a year. Now you ask, well, those people deserve that, right? But do they deserve it? It is a determination that is made on opinion by someone who has less than 3 years worth of college and may not even have children themselves, but yet they follow their little guidelines to see where you fit in the picture. They are there to investigate that this child may possibly be hurt. So stepping on your rights or your family's rights matters not to them. And there's no criminal charges, so they haven't violated anything. Okay? They pretty well have a large power. They scare you in the beginning because they show up with the police. And you say, well, people like that, they deserve that. Okay, they're doing something. But that is not always the case. A lot of times I help a lot of innocent parents as well as I help a lot of guilty parents. Okay, we are human beings and we make mistakes. And simple mistakes like drinking too much on Friday night and getting a DUI should not lead to your children being removed. Basically, if you have a drug problem, you need help. You don't need your children removed. Okay, and you may not have done anything to the children. The children may be raised in a great atmosphere. The home stay clean. Be loving mother, loving father, loving extended family all the way around. The children do good in school. There's no stuff. There's no alcohol parties, sex parties, any of those good kinds of things going on. So what are you guilty of? You are guilty of whatever they decide you are guilty of. Okay? Basically, I have had clients, and especially, this is for you guys that are in the military and you guys that are vets and 3%ers and patriots out there. Basically, involve a gun, you got a problem. Okay? It is as simple as, do you store your gun correctly? Now, if you are stupid enough to invite them into your home and sit down with them and explain your life story and all of that, you think, well, that would be the thing to do. Get the truth out there. They'll know that we're a good parent. Yes, we have firearms, but they're properly taken care of. There should be no problems, right? Wrong. Because the person in which you're talking to may not believe in guns. The person in which you're talking to may not believe in religion. And basically, so when you say, well, the children and I go to church twice a week, we're involved in the community church, that doesn't mean anything to them. Okay? And basically, if you think you're beyond these people knocking on your door, you need to wake up, because you're not. Military personnel, let me tell you, I've had, just in the last year, I have had 3 cases, all cases successfully closed. But 2 o'clock in the morning, I get a call from Afghanistan. I get a thing from Afghanistan. Everybody with me still? I think I may have lost it, but pushing my button. Basically, and the gentleman from Afghanistan calls me and he says I have to be in an Oregon court on Monday morning. Basically, they are trying to take my parental rights away. and adopt my children out or child out. The gentleman flies to Seattle, Washington, drives straight to my house. We show up in court. Basically, when we show up in court, he not only asks for his child, but he also asks for the youngest child. And basically, the court system gave it to him. After they gave it to him, they then began harassing him in Maine about child support, about basically sending specialists to make sure, because of his military training, that he was not too harsh on the children. Basically, when it comes to the military, you guys are out there busting your ass. You don't get any credit for that. The mom gets the credit because she's the one with the children every day. So dad may be out supporting the children, but he's not with the children every day. And basically, because of his military training or his past military training, he could be a threat to the child. Okay, these are the things that they go off of with the system. And basically, you're in a property court. It's actually being determined who will regain and keep property of your children. Okay, and you say, well, I don't have any kids, so it doesn't affect me. Does your neighbor have kids? Do you have a niece? Does she have children? It is not just your immediate children. It is also basically the extended family. And when it comes to the extended family, the best thing to do here to exercise your constitutional rights and use your constitutional rights is basically to step up as a group. Anytime that there is a group that the government agency has to step against, they usually step much lighter. But once they gain control, it will be a year before your child usually returns back to your own home. And you may be totally innocent.
Can we hear?
Candy, are you there?
Am I back?
You're back.
Okay, where did you lose me at?
Getting your children back.
You were talking about the extended families.
Okay, so I'm going to pick back up. Sorry, guys, I guess I popped out and didn't realize it. Reunification. If this process occurs, you've got a year's worth of battles going. You want to reunificate with your children and with your family, of course, as soon as possible. Your constitutional rights will do you no good unless you basically build your own case, provide it to your attorney, as if you cannot provide the information to defend yourself with the attorney as a good parent, the attorney cannot defend you in a court of law. Okay? So on reunifications, when this opens, naturally, you want to completely cooperate. But by completely cooperating, you are actually giving them the ammunition to continue a case. They will say, well, we need you to sign doctor's releases. So, okay, you sign a doctor's release. That doctor's release, basically, you didn't happen to put on there that you were only releasing records for the last 3 years. So now the state has access to all the way back to your records and mental health records as to when you were a minor child. And I have seen grandparents who got arrested in the 60s for marijuana at a concert actually be refused visitation to their grandchildren because they had a 17-year-old felony for possession of marijuana. Okay, now marijuana happens to be legal, but this is also an agency which basically receives federal monies. Therefore, marijuana still, in the eyes of Children's Services, is addressed and considered to be no different than heroin or methamphetamines at this point in time. So you have no case if you try to fight against that. You can be a completely innocent parent. And you're like, well, they've got my kids. What do I do? Guess what? There's nobody out there to help you. There's nobody to give you good advice and resources if you don't have a drug problem. Now, if you have a drug problem, you immediately get yourself in treatment and you'll get all the help and all the counseling that you need. Basically, if you have a mental health problem, you go to the mental health facility, they'll put you on pills or try to counsel with you and try to work out your problems. But if you don't have a problem and you're being misrepresented, there is nobody out there for you except yourself and your extended family. That's when it's necessary for the extended family to be involved, literally to go to the meetings, literally the whole bit. Because once they have the child, they're not going to instantly bring that child back into the home. They don't make any money. Okay, we all know how it comes down to money. They don't make any money if your child goes back to your home too soon. You know why? Because they have to trump up. That never fails. And I'm going to tell you, I've been doing this for 18 years. And every year in May, cases just boom and open. Why? Because they have to put in their funding needs. And they must have a full load to be able to get at least the same amount, if not more money. So basically, they open as many cases, even if they're small cases. I've had them show up at people's house where they were supposed to show up a year prior, said they could not make contact. Yet in this particular situation, the mother worked from home. The children went to the same school and they lived in the same house for 5 years. And Child Protective Services could not find them and could not contact them for a year, and then pull some stuff out of their hat. So basically, their files can go back as long as you let them. If you do not put controls on your files, and if you do not gather your own information and be able to defend yourself to give to your attorney so that your attorney can properly defend you, and even then, you may still lose your child. Or you may go from the full-time parent to the every other weekend. And you know, it used to be just the dads they did that to. And basically, now it's the moms too. You know, raise a child for 6 years and that child never be out of your sight. And basically, all of a sudden, you can only see that child for every other weekend a month. And maybe that has to be supervised. These people have that kind of control. You got to keep it tight. You need to be in with your partner. If you've got firearms, if you've got prescription drugs, if you drink alcohol, you have a minor in the house, put that shit up. Sorry for the language, basically, but put it up. It doesn't need to be around the kids. When CPS or Children's Services or Department of Child Welfare is the correct name now these days, it changes over the years. CPS is the one that I usually use and prefer. But basically, don't give them any information. This is an investigation. If you're not guilty of a crime, don't give them anything to work with. Okay? If the judge says sign a release, sign a reasonable release, but don't give them full access to everything that's happened in your life, not unless you want to pay for it twice. And basically, you know, in the end, after you go through all this battle for 2 years, yelling and screaming and stomping and trying, well, how can they take my kids? Basically, you missed 2 years with those kids because we made no changes to our system. Yes, there's changes that need to be made. Oh, and basically out here in Oregon, those changes are to get rid of Kate Brown. Basically, Kate Brown got to the governor's office on rewriting the Child Protective Service laws. And basically, these new laws that they have in place are so vague that basically you can insert and build anything out of any of them. Basically, and so what kind of chance do you have? It can be a valid story. If it's a valid story and you're messing up with your kids, you need to go take care of that. And you need to take care of it right away. And basically you need to continue to take care of it and make some changes because you chose to bring those children into the world. If you're not getting a break, you better find the evidence. You better prove your innocence. Basically, you need to prove that you're enough of a parent for these kids back. Now, here's the new laws that are coming into effect. Everybody ignores what's going on with our children because It's not happening to them today. So, or they're not that type of person. So, Child Protective Services would never show up at my door. I'm an honorable, I'm an honorably discharged Army Ranger. Well, guess what? I got one of those on a caseload right now. Been running over 2 years. Best he's gotten out of, he had full custody of his children, basically on a child custody order out of California. He came up here to Oregon, lost his kids in 6 weeks. He now sees them every other weekend. And his case is still open. It's going on 2 years. Okay, so respect, honor, what is earned does not matter. Basically, these people are after the goal to find out if the child has been neglected or abused. All the information and they find nothing else, they're going to comb through that information to try to build a case because they can't just waste their time and not take a child. Now, say they have a child. Say your case goes on for 2 years. Say you're a straightforward person, you tell it like it is, you don't lie, you've got a good reputation in the community. You walk in, you tell these people something you think you should be taking at face value. They don't care what you think. They take it at their value. Okay, and out of that, they could well determine that you're too aggressive. Okay, very much so. I've seen that over and over, especially with men, too aggressive. You have previous military training. Oh, now you might be dangerous. Oh, you keep a gun in your home? Oh my God. Okay. Basically, so in dealing with these people, dealing with them in groups, getting a support team, getting your evidence together, you don't have to sign a release to the government. You can try to sign a release to your private attorney and get all the records to your attorney and make it your attorney's responsibility to give them the records they feel that they need. But you have to learn to protect yourself, and ignoring the problem with the new laws, it goes way beyond what Child Protective Services did before. Guess what? Now in Oregon courts, they are now granted the right to have Child Protective Services workers. Now remember, we're talking about people who have an associate degree, but may not have above that, okay? Coming and making decisions in divorce court on who should have the parent, who's the better parent. They're going to interview the mother and they're going to interview the father who are trying to get a divorce, and they're going to decide who should have custody and how child support should be paid. Okay, if you don't think that's a government overreach, you need to do some research yourself. That's a big government overreach. That pretty much so means that if our families separate, if our families have problems, we have the state now involved in every move that's made. Basically, people, we really need to do something about this. Yes, I've been a voice for 18 years, and you know what? I can scream to the high heavens of the mountains, but it never gets anywhere. They play games left and right just to get in their doors. Is an unbelievable, sit in court. If you so much as discredit anything I say, sit in court. Watch an adoption process. Watch them not listen to the children and what the children want. Watch the mother cry over in the corner. What was her problem? She didn't have proper housing for the children. So at what point does the government step in and say, well, this isn't proper for this child, so we're taking this child away? There's been some issues out here in Oregon with off-grid homesteaders, basically, but by Oregon law and by federal law, so this should cover most everyone, a child must have a place to sleep, but it is not required to be a bed. It requires a cover. A child needs water, does not require hot water, but does require water. These things are very simple, but they use these things along with other things because education. Anybody out there teaching their children at home? Basically, Child Protective Services, they'll question whether you're doing a good job or not. And if you're not giving your child the proper education, even though you think you will, you may not have your children. And you can say, man, this lady's crazy, but I'm not. I've watched this for 18 years in this small county that I've lived in. I've done cases all over the United States, basically through phone connections and through resources. Run a little page on Facebook that is protecting families from government harm. It's mostly for parents that are already involved. It's when I cover basically good attorneys or anything like that. I share that information on that site. You can hear a lot of sad stories. You hear very few good stories. I can tell you this. If you feel I do not know what I'm talking about, in the 18 years, I have had one case in 18 years where the child was not eventually returned to the home in 2 years. It's a matter of educating the parents on what the state expects. And if the parents can provide what the state expects, and understand this changes throughout the case. So you can't just step up and say, oh, well, we've got all this in line. They want to see it. They want a mental health evaluation on you to make sure that you're of sound mind and body to take care of your children. And basically, they pay for that, right? And I know in this particular area, the guy's pretty famous because it's the only one that the state can get to contract with. Basically, so it's all an opinion that's put into court, and the decision is not made by a jury. Basically, it is made by a judge. And these aren't partial decisions. These aren't temporary decisions. You're not being sent to 3 years in prison. You're being sentenced to life without your children and life without your families. Basically, when with Child Protective Services, on the financial end of it, know that each adoption that comes out of state from a Child Protective Services case is worth $8,000 to the state. So let me ask you this. Is the caseworker going to return that child to the home or keep the $2,400 bonus to make their truck payment? Which might it be? Okay. And the Child Protective Services here in Oregon and in quite a few other states I have been reading here recently are under investigation. Kate Brown's new thing that she jumped on the bandwagon with is under review for changes. Basically, and they are currently being investigated for missing federal funding and biased activities. Okay. Here in Josephine County, your poorer counties, and this is one of those counties, your poorer counties are kind of maybe picked on a little bit by statistics because you have a little less education. Maybe you have a little more criminal activity going on there too as well, basically. But it's not so much the criminal activity as long as you've done what you're required to do with the state and on probation. It's after the fact. It's the fact that you ever did it in your life to begin with and how that will affect your child is the way that they look at it. So it's such an in deep subject that basically it can go any which way. You can stand on your constitutional rights in family court and it will do you no good. However, you can also be very creative and learn the system a little bit and learn how to use things like writ of assistance where you can get direct information to the judge, where you can share information that there's no other place to share, and basically use some of what I refer to as biased resources that are available and set up in the system that if you can find them and you can access them, everybody can use them. Basically anything like that to keep it on that. You literally have to become an investigator and an attorney. If you don't get the children's medical records, school records, stuff like that right up front, you'll be forbidden access to them and will not be able to use them at all on your case. Once Child Protective Services takes custody, they cut you off from all ability to receive your children's records. If your child happens to go to the hospital, maybe they tell you, maybe they don't. Basically, I recently had a case that is now closed where a newborn child was born. This was definitely a child of color, basically. And the skin on children who are mixed, sometimes there's a splotching that will come up a few days after birth, and it usually only lasts a few days, basically, and that's kind of a sign that they're a mixed child. Well, these things look just like bruises. Had a mother who had a premature baby, which they thought it might be premature from drugs, which it turned out it wasn't. That's why that case was closed. But basically, on her second visit to visit her newborn preemie, she noticed bruises all over her baby's back and her baby's rump and her baby's back legs. Can you imagine? Basically, and she was in an observational visit. Did they bother to tell her? No. She threatened to call the law. She wanted an ambulance there. She wanted her child attended to. Nobody would give her an explanation. Why? Because they wanted to see her reaction. These are the types of games that they will play. They will say, oh, well, you can have visits in your home as soon as we find someone to supervise them. So you excitedly go out to the church, go out to people that you know that are in good standings, basically, and you ask them, would you supervise a visit so I can see my children more? Well, of course they will. But when the caseworker gets their information, what she kind of forgets to tell you is it takes 17 weeks to clear their background. So that means that if in 17 weeks, if the person's background clears, then you can have supervised visits. So these are some of the interesting games that they like to play. Some of the money that they get and how they get their money. Basically, the fact that families need to clump together and they need to forget about their personal problems because they can play around are taken away. I've seen families lose their children because all they really needed to do was get a divorce and live in a separate house. And it's simple things like that in life that are all going to affect what we do. And if we have children, or our sister has children, or our brother has sons, basically, or you have nieces, nephews, or whatever the case may be, as a patriot, as a constitutionalist, it's your responsibility. It's our responsibility to school our children, to teach our children. It is not our responsibility to look the other way. And what I hope tonight is, at least through this, I've never spoke on radio before, I apologize, but basically, if you just look, all you've got to do is look. It's all over the internet. Just pay attention for a minute, and you'll be amazed at 1 minute worth of your time paying attention could help save a lot of families from being separated. And I tried to run this as long as I could. I don't know what else to say. Are there any questions or anything?
Yes, if I could get real quick before my phone dies here. I had a couple of questions. For one thing, you sound like congratulations on your wonderful track record. That is just amazing. And the second thing I'd like to is maybe on your page that maybe you could tell us about, you could give resources to people on do's and don'ts when they find themselves in this situation. The third thing that I would like to talk about, if you have encountered, is we've been trying to get to the bottom of these 800,000 years of kids a year that are reported missing in the United States. When we had our last guest, I found that according to the FBI, 88% of the kids that wind up in human trafficking are in the care of Child Protective Services. Now, 1 in 7, and only one by an outside family member. So obviously, I think we have found the problem. If 88% of the kids are going missing from Child Protective Services and winding up in child trafficking, for God only knows what, then I think we've located the problem. Have you been aware of any of this?
When it comes to the child trafficking, about the only thing that I am aware of is more the child trafficking of 12, 13, 14-year-old girls. Basically, if a child goes into foster care, and I happen to be one of those kids that went into foster care, basically, when they go into foster care and all of a sudden these are the new parents, these are the new rules, with today's society and the privilege of our children, basically the kids get it in their mind that everything is hunky-dory in heaven out there. So they run away. okay? Or they start hanging out with the wrong crowd. From there, then it gets into the sex market real quick because these girls now got to pay for what they just got. And basically, it's a give and take situation. And out to age 12 is a prime age for that. As far as people just snatching kids, they're doing that for pure out money. There's a big overseas market for children. That one doesn't have anything to do with Child Protective Services so much, basically, but children in foster care, children that go to other family members, children that are not watched, children that their parents don't know where they're at. These are the children that disappear. And they say, the police are like, oh, well, we don't have anything to go on. That's the end of the case. And a lot of children in Child Protective Services get injured. I had a case, it's been about 5 years, thank God. And the child did survive, but the child was taken out of the mother's care because she ran a questionable online business while the children were asleep in a locked room in the basement. The children were put in temporary care of her sister, who had just remarried. And some of you, if you live around here, may remember this. And basically, the new husband got angry at the, I believe, 8-month-old child for pottying in the bathtub and proceeded to scald the child. Now, he is in prison for that, but this child still wears this scar to these very days. And so there's bad things that can happen along with the other. As far as getting any further into the sex trafficking, it's not as big of an issue in my area, so it's not as much of a primary. I would say it's probably a big issue up around Portland, though, if I were to guess.
Yes, we're going to stay after that story. And like I said, I don't know how much juice I have left here, but we want to stay after this Child Protective Services. And we know that Pete will get this on to the president and people that in power that can maybe get after this. I know that President Trump has talked about this before and he is aware of it, but we're going to keep educating him. And hopefully, thank you for your great advice, track record. And we will try and pass all this along as we try and get after all these horrible things that are happening in our court systems. And it is improving, but we've got a long way to go. And I think child family court is probably a top concern right now.
Well, I hope you will invite me back again. I tried to throw a whole lot of stuff into one short segment of time, and there's just so many things and so many breakdowns. And basically, I will start posting on the page a little bit, some advice. I used to do a little site called Grandma's Corner, and to stay out of trouble, I used to do it from an interview point. I would have somebody interview and take Grandma's opinions. So remember that all of this is opinions. You must back up any information that you get from me, back it up with your local laws. So because the states are a little bit different, even county to county, there's a special provisions, and I'll actually post how you get to ours here in Josephine County, and maybe that will help other people be able to get to theirs in their county, that will tell you about special rules that just your county has. And by the way, that's for inspections. That goes all the way. That's anything that have to do with the court system, with the family court system or property court system. So, but I appreciate the invite. I hope you will invite me back. And thank you for letting me talk my mind.
Well, we'll definitely have you back. In fact, we've got another guest that also talked on this subject. So this is something we're extremely interested. So we would be very, very happy to have you back and to keep giving us updates. And hopefully we'll see some changes in the laws and some new things happening with this. And hopefully we can work together towards a greater America. And so, yes, we definitely want to have you back and get more updates to see what's happening with this child family court situation. So thank you so much for being a guest. And I guess Patriot Cowgirl, you can take over and tell us about the next guest, I guess, if you're there. And we'll get on with the show here. But that was just so informative. We thank you so much for coming on here. And yes, we definitely want to have you back and stay up on this. Is a very important topic for so many people. So God bless you.
Our next guest actually had an emergency and can't be on the show. So, Candy, if you have more to add, you can add it. You did great. Anybody else got any questions?
Yeah, I caught some of her, what she had to say. And I would just want to say I do appreciate her being on the show, Candy. We do hope you'll come back, give us even more information if possible. Any of the others want to, any questions or anything for the young lady?
One thing I'd like to add, if possible, is now, is this $8,000 that the states are getting, is this coming from the federal government?
Yes, sir. It does come as a federal payment.
All right, that's something that maybe the president can do something about at least then. So that would be a good start. By taking out the federal incentive for these people to do this would be huge. So thank you very much for that. That's about all I had to ask.
Okay. And I want to add something else that looks like Trump is taking down the deep state slowly but surely. Ladies and gentlemen, you aren't going to believe what's getting ready to happen. Just keep a very close watch, get your popcorn and pop out, because deep state's going down. They found out that they can't bribe or threaten Trump. He's a step ahead of them every direction. These child sex places that are going on, they're coming down. There were a bunch more arrested this last week. I don't have the stuff in front of me, so I can't give the exact information on it. But between the sex trafficking, between the deep state, what they're trying to do to keep our next judge from being sworn in, well, none of this, their tricks are not going to happen. It's done. And Trump is done with them. And I found out today, which really made me happy. I was informed from Chris, who is one of our people in Ohio, the Antifa has been shut down completely in the state of Ohio.
More states need to follow suit on that.
They sure do. So, Patriot Girl, this is your show tonight. I just wanted to let you know that I am here.
Hey, Candy, this is Tom. I'm here in Harney County. We did some research with the Cowboy and Lady, a website that me and Renee Powers runs. And we found out that in Harney County has the highest suicide rate of teenagers in Child Protective Services. Have you heard anything about it?
Yes, as a matter of fact, I have heard about it. I saw that on a Facebook post the other day. Also, the other thing is Oregon is also in one of the highest states for suicides over mothers who have had their children removed. Both of these are problems. Basically, Kate Brown's solution was to add more money into Child Protective Services Mental Health Fund. Basically, when that fund doesn't pay for that person to get mental assistance, their Oregon Health Plan does. So it's kind of double money. That's some of the money that they're asking for, is because this money was given to them and appropriated through state and federal to provide extra care for especially what they call preteen females that were being uprooted and replaced in a different location.
Wow. Thank God I didn't have no little girls. I have all sons instead of little girls.
Yeah, this it's ridiculous what's going on.
There's yours, and the one you're smoking makes back.
I want to thank you, Candy, for being here, and you were awesome. It was a great radio show. You did a fantastic job, and thank you for educating us.
Well, next time you invite me back, I hope to be a little bit more prepared. I kind of did this one off of the wing, so I'm sure I tried to cover broad subjects in a very narrow way. So next time, maybe I'll be a little bit more, I can quote some laws and other things where people be able to go look this stuff up for themselves.
Well, thank you, and that's great. And I just okay, yeah, go ahead. That sounds fantastic. I just want to say that we should all be thrilled to see all these human traffickers going down. Just getting back to the news a little bit, and that we know the declassification is coming not only on the FISA documents, but also on all of their texts. All these people that we know are so corrupt. So you can see why they've been trying to block and kick and scream. So the news today was that Trump turned it over to the IG. It's my understanding from his tweet. So that they no longer can block the release of these unredacted texts and documents. And you can imagine the crime. If you take the worst people in crime, you're talking about the people whose texts they are going to release to the public. So I find this to be completely hilarious. They've tried everything possible, as far as even said, no, we just won't do it. We refuse. But of course, the IG has them all unredacted, and I'm sure they've made a few changes. So there'll be a cover-up, more probably charges, conspiracy cover-up. But on the number of charges they have already is amazing. And of course, we had the witness being called in the Uranium One grand jury, which I thought was very interesting. That the grand jury is rolling along in Uranium One, and that they called that key witness that's got the goods on everything. So that's exciting.
Yeah, and with it is. It's very exciting. Some of the things that Trump is doing is absolutely amazing. Even with the immigrants and the people that they're sending back and so on and so forth, they just said, the federal government just stated that unless there was evidence of the parent not caring for a child with the immigrant children, that it was mandatory that they be returned to the parents' care within 30 days. If that's the case on immigrants, why are our children out of their homes for 2 years by state laws? It gives a good opening spot to try to get those things changed as they basically proceed up through Supreme Court.
We'll make sure these ideas and these points are passed along. That's very, very good point that you've made there. So outstanding. Is there anybody else has any more questions, or Johnny, do you have any more? Gamer, anybody?
And Pete, you're going to pass this on to the president, right?
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, if there's no more questions, then I will close the show with I want to thank the listeners. I want to thank our guests, our staff, and I want to thank God for being here, for being able to get this out to the American people. We're United Constitutional Patriots Radio. We give the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth of what's going on. Our guests, they don't just live it and experience, but their knowledge is from experience. And that's why we have them. Like most radio shows, they'll cut someone off and they'll try to stop them from having a chain of thought and ask them questions, and they miss a lot of what they're going to say. We do not do that on this radio show. So with that, I'm going to say God bless America. God bless you. God bless the Patriots. And y'all have a good evening. We'll see you Monday night. Have a great night, great evening, and good night.
I want to thank Candy. You did a wonderful job, Candy, and thank you so much.
Hey, thank you for offering to have me on board. I'd like to come on board again, a little bit more organized. I really appreciate you guys thinking of me. You guys take care and thank you again.
We will definitely have you back.
I want to thank everybody for joining the United Constitutional Patriots radio show tonight. Our next show will be on Friday at 6 p.m. Mountain, 6 p.m. Pacific. All you Patriots have a great night, and thank you for tuning in. Thank you, and God bless everybody.